Awesome. Hi, everyone. So I am Nancy, and I have Siddhant with me as my co-speaker, and we are going to present a lightning talk.
Maybe you can start sharing. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our talk. And now we know with the IT sector being projecting that they are like IT sector is consuming 21% of the global energy in the next decade. We know that sustainability is no longer an optional thing. So today we are going to explore how API governance can drive efficiency and reduce the environmental impact. So let's get started. A little bit introduction about me. I'm a CNCF ambassador. I am a chair for CNCF Tag Environment Sustainability Advocacy in the CNCF community. And Siddhant and I, we work together at Gitpod. Siddhant, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Siddhant. I work at a software engineer at Gitpod and also maintaining some of the open source projects or GitHub1s or Greenstand organization, and also one of the core contributors at OpenFGA. So by far you already know like what is API governance and all, but as like in this talk we'll also talk about like how does it matter for the environment sustainability and also for the organization. So there are like some key factors which like it as a major lead there are like four factors. First of course is like the security compliance, which is also good and a required field for your company and for your the product. First thing is like the security thing, and another thing is like the standardization and consistency, which an API should also have to follow a good practices principles, to have the consistency around the API. So your company has like a certain standard practices. So you have the proper standard criteria to follow that, and also a versioning and lifecycle management. So you can also track your progress over the time, and with all these things, at the end, you need a good observability, like how your API is actually performing, which we will also talk about further later in the tool section. Nancy.
Yeah, so as Siddhant already described, and we've been hearing a lot about the governance, ABI governance. But let's discuss that why exactly it's so important. And this is one of the example which happened in the real world example, which happened in November 2024. There was a threat actor which scraped data from around 489 million Instagram users, and it has like a lot of critical information like the emails, location, and account creation dates, and more. So how did this happen? The attacker exploited the API endpoints, which makes unauthorized automated requests to extract the user data at scale. So this is one of the examples which shows that why API governance is important. But we have already established like why it is crucial, and we have heard a lot about it the whole day. But are there any key components which are missing? Is there anything we can do when we are building our APIs that can help us reduce the unnecessary computing, or or can we optimize for the energy use? So I also talked about this in the starting that within the next 10 years, it is predicted that, 21% of the world's energy consumption will come from IT. So we as people from IT are responsible for this. And by optimizing the APIs, we can cut down on the redundant computation, bandwidth usage, and carbon emissions. So this is something which I really liked. Governance plus sustainability equal to effective API strategy. So this should go hand in hand to create an efficient API strategy. And organizations need to move beyond just functional and security aspects of API and think about the long-term impact. So by implementing the governance frameworks with sustainable practices, we are not only building the efficient APIs, but we are also reducing the cost and the emissions. So this goes hand in hand. Now, climate change is equal to is the only constant. We've already all we have always heard in our life that the only constant in life is change. But if we see today, the only constant which we see now is climate change. So we need to be concerned about the sustainability aspect. Now, let's see the key benefits which we can have if we integrate sustainability into API governance. One of the obvious is lower resource consumption. For example, optimizing your API request, which can lower the CPU usage, which in turn can reduce the power consumption. The second one is reduced waste. So there was one diagram in which we see, in which I was just checking that there's like the APIs are going to explode in future. We have tons of API, millions of APIs. And if we can, reuse or the existing APIs, it can basically help us. It can reduce the waste. So less data transfer is equal to, again, lower bandwidth cost and reduced emissions. Then we have compliance and transparency. So tracking the API energy consumption can also help organizations align with the sustainability goals. Then long-term resilience. So green computing isn't just an ethical choice, but it's also strategic advantage for the organizations for the long-term business sustainability. Now let's move on to the next one, which is sustainable API strategies.
Yeah, so like let's think like how we can actually achieve that. Like we can start with some quick wins, like having a proper page-generated API, and maybe we can introduce some compression, a gzip compression to your API responses. And instead of querying the whole data, you can maybe filter out your responses. Like you just out of 1,000 API response, you just wanted like a 200 thing, which is actually needed for your product or for your service. Maybe introducing a caching service, like, and of course caching introduces a lot of a good way in the UX and all across your product. And having a concurrency around your APIs, which is eventually better for the longer resiliency. And of course adopting a green hosting solution like AWS, GCP, and all of their respective cloud services have their own carbon footprint, and you can check there in the management. Yeah, let's understand like a real world, like high level example. Like suppose if you have like a multiple large requests on a single server, it will eventually have the high CPU usage, which will eventually have the larger CO2 emission. But what if we introducing like smaller payloads and divide the traffic by like having some more sophisticated like caching data and like or paging data, and like now we have the reduced traffic, which will also have the optimized server and which eventually reduce the CO2 emission.
Awesome. So let's move from concepts to implementation. So this is one of the code example, and it's like unoptimized. This API retrieves 10,000 records and returns them all in the single response. So this is one of the example, and this is a major inefficiency. Obviously, in terms of CPU overload, the serialization bottleneck, the multiple users are hitting this endpoint, and it can cause spikes in CPU usage. It also has like network congestion. It is like trying to drink from a fire hose. Too much data at once slow downs everything down. So this is an inefficient design, which basically wastes CPU. It overloads the networks and increase energy consumption. Let's see the optimized example.
Yeah, so we started with the quick wins. Like we introduced the pagination, we introduced the gzip compression. Like you can also check in the encoding, which eventually reduces the lower CPU usage and so give the best bandwidth usage. And in the next slide, we will see the like some of the benchmark examples which can eventually get like. So this is like a quick example. You can get the more number of requests per second, also get a higher transfer speed and with the lower CPU usage if you follow these API strategies.
Awesome. So let's quickly see the tools which can help us reduce the sustainability, which can help us with the sustainability. So I'm going to quickly cover this because we are already end of the talk. So we have Google API G, we have Kong Gateway, we have Stoplight Spectral, G Profiler. These are some of the tools which can help you, and you can incorporate in your existing architectures. So this is one example of G Profiler. So G Profiler is very useful because it helps you detect the CPU usage for your API calls, and you can basically make changes according to the thing. The first step basically for having sustainability in your system is measuring, and this helps you measure. So we have different environment sustainability tools. We have CCF, Kepler, and Skifendre. So these are different tools which you can also incorporate into your architecture, and they monitor and reduce the energy consumption of your APIs and also the cloud workloads. So in the end, the key points to take away is governance plus sustainability is equal to efficiency. It improves security and it also saves the resources. It reduces duplication. And you can start with quick wins, like as Siddhant mentioned, pagination caching, or maybe optimizing your code. So these are the small things which you can start with.
Yeah, like and of course you need to measure and observability well with your APIs, so you can like maybe you can follow some of the tools which Nancy told us about, and you can Of course, you can choose the green infrastructure to overly introduce the better and for the better environment.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening to us. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to our LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm happy to discuss about this.